all things come from the mind. We're literally formulating reality as we think and speak. We are at a critical juncture right now and a beautiful opportunity for humanity to truly be aware of the power that we have as beings of light.
When does identity become limiting in our expression?
If you label yourself as a healer, entrepreneur, father, whatever, every one of those terms, every noun is a box. And so we're starting to experience this collective effort and gameplay of unboxing. But we are so much more than just human.
Oh, that's really powerful.
We live in dual and non-dual reality at the same time. Dual is particle and matter, and non-dual is energy. We constantly live in a paradox, and you get to decide which game are you playing right now.
And how do you begin to discern between the two?
Remember that you're a decoder and the player, and that this game can be any way that you want anyway.
Yo, what's up everyone, and welcome to this special episode of Stay Grounded with one of my oldest and dearest mentors, Dr. Steve Young. So I met Steve years ago at a event, and immediately when I met him, he was talking about concepts and perspectives on health that were so far beyond the times. But now I'm looking back like 5, 6, 7 years later, like he was right. I mean, the companies that he started, the health trends that he predicted, the level of connection he has to mental, emotional, and spiritual laws of being are unparalleled. And so I ran into him at a dinner in Austin, and I was blown away because I hadn't seen him in years. And Steve is also the man who really brought me deeper into my own self-love journey. He really kicked off that journey years ago. And so getting to have him here was such a treat. And on this episode, we talk about the power of our words and the power of our language to create our reality. You know, like simple words like, I get to do this versus I have to do this. Like you could just feel the energetics between them. And when we start to recognize that our words carry energy and they carry weight, it starts to make sense that if we have limiting language patterns or constructs and we keep saying certain things in ways that are keeping us trapped, we're not going to feel well. And so we really, in this episode, talk a lot about how do we actually transition from a limited language set to a limitless language set? And how do we become aware of the energetics behind what we're saying and how we're saying it? And how do we take more agency in our lives to design a beautiful expression of life that is so rooted in our conscious language patterns that we're using? And so this was such a powerful conversation for me. It brought a lot of awareness to just the power of our words and how much power we have to actually change our reality just by changing our words. And so I hope you enjoyed this conversation. It was filled with a lot of really practical tips and practical tools that you can use to redesign a language set that is more in alignment with your true core. And like I said, Dr. Steve is just so incredible. And I'm really grateful that we had a chance to record with him. He was not someone that I thought I would have a chance that I would see, let alone have a chance to record something with. So this episode's a real treat for each of you, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So without further ado, here is the most amazing Dr. Steve Young. Enjoy. Steve,
hey,
welcome back to the show.
Yeah.
You were like one of my first guests on the show. I think almost
so.
Like 20, can't even remember. I think you're like episode like 25 or something like that. It was like so early.
Yeah.
I was still finding my bearings, and I just remembered being so blown away with, even at that time, just like the conversations you were inspiring around health and vitality and well-being. And it's been just such a joy to learn from you and to be kind of just like even witnessing kind of the incredible depths that you're accessing now. You know, it's like it's a real treat. So I'm super grateful that we get to refresh now in this very it feels like a critical time period. Mm-hmm. And I'm, one of the things that inspired me to want to have this conversation with you, we were at dinner the other night, and you were bringing awareness to like languaging I was using. And I was like, wow, like it's so almost hidden in some ways, like the words we choose to use to describe certain things. And it's almost, even if it's on autopilot, like words carry weight and energy. And so like, I'd love to maybe begin there and just speak to like, one, why should we be mindful of the words we are using?
Yeah. You know, when we piece together the alphabet, right, we spell words. And this is code, hidden truth based on ancient wisdom that literally every word that we think and speak, we're spell casting. We're literally formulating reality as we think and speak, right? Which ties back to one of those Hermetic laws. It's the law of mentalism. All things come from the mind. And so we are at a critical juncture right now and a beautiful opportunity for humanity to truly be aware of the power that we have as beings of light, right? I'd speak about right languaging. There's a whole movement about being superhuman. And I remind people that still anchors us to just being human and being superhuman. But we are so much more than just human. We're literally divine beings, right? And so even just being superhuman anchors us to our flesh, our five senses, and we get to improve upon that. But when we realize we're divine beings, we can do things that you can't even imagine as a human. Even that is an example.
Okay, this just blew a whole nother world of conversation around like, and I think that's a really important frame, because you're right. Like when I think of myself as a divine being, it opens up the aperture. But how does one begin to dissolve identity? Because ultimately that's what you're really speaking to, right? Like it's like this game of moving beyond the identity of identification. Maybe I'm identifying with the fact that I am a human being, or maybe I'm identifying with the fact that I'm a male. Like, you know, there's, and I want to actually also ask, like, especially with that one, like the male piece, like, you know, I'm, the more I've dove into my development work, my spiritual work, I'm actually finding it incredibly valuable for me to be like, I am a man, and like use that framing to create a certain set of behaviors that empower me to live in a way that is in alignment with the way I want to live, right? Like it's like I can follow an archetypal map.
Yep.
So how does one balance, you know, this true like map, which is like that's useful, with also like when does identity become limiting in our expression, like it would be with like human or superhuman? And how do you begin to discern between the two?
Sure, yeah. Before answering that question, I'll give a little context. And I'll remind everyone that what I'm about to give is simply Stephen's story and Stephen's opinion. This is not absolute truth in terms of what is real, right? Which is, you know, if we just look at the law correspondence in Hermetics, as above, so below, as within, so throughout, it means that everything that is in our world is a reflection of our insights, and everything is a fractal. And all the universal wisdom is right in front of us. I just want to set the container. And so if we look at, you know, physics and quantum mechanics, we know that in the same moment, we are particles of matter, and yet we're also in exactly the same moment, waves of energy at the same time, right? And so in a particle world, this is the world of separation. There's a you, there's a me. And in the energy world, we're literally one unit of energy in the entire universe. The energy isn't separate, right? So another way to speak to this is we, in real time, live in dual and non-dual reality at the same time. Dual is particle and matter, and non-dual is energy. And so the reason I give that context is we constantly live in a paradox, and you get to decide which game are you playing right now, right? Are you playing the non-dual game, or are you playing, or the energy game, or are you playing the dual/physical matter game? And even that's really important to kind of discern moment to moment. Like I shared at dinner, I have not figured out how to do both at the same time. I'm sure there's a way, I haven't figured it out. So I tend to play this game sequentially, right? Now I'll answer the question. So there's a saying, the law of polarity, the Hermetic laws, you go through two to get to one. right? So you must experience the opposite of something to realize that they're actually not opposites. And as you experience these wide swings of both sides of any reality, that you can start to dissolve the two back to one, right? Another way to say it is you go through the world of polarity, physical matter, and separation and humanness to get to one non-dual energy, spirit, God, right? I'm just unpacking this so it really lands for people. So to answer your question, it is very helpful to take on the identity of masculine, right? Which is half the picture, because what's on the other side? Feminine. And so when you take on the archetype and the identity of masculine, you really get to play the game of dualism matter well, right? And I'm sure everyone listening knows there's this huge topic right now of like men and masculinity and feminine and females, right? Because we're playing this dance of two. However, there will be a time, and I study a lot at Dharma Herb, they have all kinds of pictures depicting this, that humanity, once you're bored with the game of duality, right? Once you're like, I get it, I fully have mastered the game of this masculine and feminine dance, what's going to happen is you're going to merge the two and harmonize it back to one, which would be more of this androgynous energy, right? And now you're going to play as one or energy or non-dual, right? And so there's a benefit of course, this separation in a separate identity, because that gets you to the non-dual and the unity.
Well, it's almost like you have. I've learned through my own framing, like if I push too much in one direction with one identity, without honoring the other, I actually break.
Yeah,
and then that breaking is the union within, and then through me exploring, okay, how do I integrate more feminine qualities, whether it's nurture or softness or tenderness, what I might not label with an identity. And then when I cultivate those, I do come into more of that integrated whole state where it's not necessarily so black and white. Like we are more just divine beings, right? There's a divinity in all of it, and there's a divinity to honoring all of it within you. And I think that's really helpful, because it's helpful. I love the frame of like 3D matter versus energy, because I do find myself right now wanting to play more of the energy game. It's like where I feel most drawn to. It's what feels like makes most sense. When I really think about like my purpose here as a being, it's like, okay, I was born with consciousness. I was born with awareness. Somehow I'm like really aware inside of this time period.
Yeah.
For what? It's like if I was just meant to play a 3D game, why would this awareness come online in this way? And it's so I feel to transmute energy in ways that most can't, or most aren't choosing to, whatever it is, right? And so to me, it's like there's a deep purpose in actually aligning to the energetic way. And can you speak to that? Is that something that is like, is that what's happening right now? We're all being sort of initiated into more of this energy realm.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in the last 3 years, right? I think many people can agree that in the last 3 years, we've noticed in ourselves, in people in our sphere, right, our network, that in the last 3 years, people have embarked on a deep spiritual journey, whether it be through breath work or meditation, what I call plant partners, some mechanism that they are now adopting, and they've gone on this deep spiritual journey. And the reason is, right, and again, I'm just going to tie it back to some Hermetics, the law of polarity. If the system has tried to box everyone, like we were literally physically being boxed, right? Like isolation, right, from COVID. And we're mentally being boxed. During that time, if you look at the media, there was so much more polarization than ever before. So we're mentally being boxed and we're physically being boxed. And, some people were pro-boxing and some people were anti-boxing. To me, when you understand the law of polarity, you just sit back and laugh, because for every, let's say, 8 units that whoever's, sort of in control wants to box people, let's say 8 units of containment boxing, it's only going to cause 8 units of expansion and freedom. This is just the law of polarity, right? It's right in front of us. If you pull a pendulum to the left and let go, it's going to swing equidistant to the right. And so to answer your question, yes, we're seeing a lot of people expanding beyond this physical reality, beyond their identity, because every identity is a box, right? If you label yourself as a healer, entrepreneur, father, husband, wife, whatever, every one of those terms, every noun is a box, right? And so we're starting to experience this collective effort and game playing of unboxing. And so people are starting to dissolve their boxes. So yes, we're experiencing that right now.
And the dissolution of boxes. Actually, before I dive into that, can you explain what the Hermetic law is? Because you've mentioned it a few times, and anybody who's listening or watching who may have never heard of what the Hermetic laws are, like I'd love to just give a quick TLDR.
I could summarize 15 years in 5 minutes.
I was going to say.
So the best way to describe it is if life was a game, right? You can call it simulation, a video game, a projection of your consciousness, many terms. We, in the day-to-day action of experiencing life, we are the player of the game, but we're also the coder, right? And so the Hermetic laws are essentially the 7 mechanisms that allows us to access our coder self, right? And in fact, last night, just with some friends that we know, watched Free Guy, and there's a scene where there's real humans jump into the game and they're trying to get this NPC player, played by Ryan Reynolds. And Ryan Reynolds just became aware, right? He wasn't just like being controlled by the code, he became aware. And they're chasing him and, they can't catch him. And now they're like, all right, we're going to go God mode. And what they do is that these people that are inside the game, they start changing the code. So the building starts to shift and stuff. The Hermetic laws allows you to go into God mode. That's what it is, right? So that's the context. And there are these 7 laws. And the 7 laws are the law of polarity. Everything has opposites. Law of rhythm, which means everything moves in rhythm. Nothing is ever static. Law of cause and effect, input, output. Law of gender, masculine, feminine, dynamic dance. Law of mentalism, which means all things come from the mind. Law of vibration, which is all things are vibrating. I'll unpack this just a little bit. In the horizontal understanding of law of vibration, we're all one. In the vertical understanding, right, I always say, like, if the molecules on my fingertip, and these are arbitrary numbers, is vibrating at, let's say, 10 hertz, I would call it flesh, finger, right? Maybe at 20 hertz, I might call it spirit. At 30 hertz, I might call it God. But it's the same molecule. This is a huge thing for people who are into spirituality, because we've been brainwashed into thinking our spirit and God is some other place and we need to do something to connect to it. We are it. It's just a different octave of sound, right? That's one way to describe it. And I always say that this law for last, which is the law of correspondence, as above, so below, it really means that everything is a projection. Everything you discern about the situation or anything you discern about another human, it's in you. Just following that will be more revealing of who you are and what you are than any breath work, meditation, plant, partner, anything, because you're constantly being shown.
Oh, it's the mirror.
It's the mirror.
We're walking in a hall of mirrors.
Constant mirror.
It's literally a hall of mirrors. And the faster we can give ourselves the permission to accept that, the more free and liberated we become. It's like I totally resonate. Like I very much thought it was all the tools. And then when I was like, the tools have nothing to do with the mirror. The mirror is shining it right where I don't want to look. And I have a choice. I can either see it as such, or I could argue with the mirror. I can try to tell the mirror to be different. I could not like the reflection in the mirror and try to wipe down the mirror instead of looking at the reflection and being like, okay, like there's something here. But there's an empower, and I think coming back to languaging, right? Like, how does, maybe this is a useful frame for people who want to integrate more awareness into their lives without needing to go down the full rabbit hole. How does recognizing that we're walking in a hall of mirrors and like being mindful of our language, like how can we use the mirrors to become more mindful of the language we're using?
Yeah. What I found, one of the easiest processes to use to start to shift our language, right? Because in the beginning, you're like, well, what words do I shift, right? How do I navigate this game? Well, here's a really simple rule that I have not able to be proven false. And the rule is any language, phrase, or word that becomes media popular, start to question it. Any word that becomes mass media, like a term or a single word that's being promoted in the media, because I think we at this point know, the media is not a serving platform like mass media. And so those that are in control of the content, of course, are coding everyone's consciousness in a way to control everyone. Not that they're evil, right? They just believe that this form of control is the best thing to keep humanity safe. Just like we put a dog on a leash to keep the dog safe, I guarantee you when the wild animals look at a dog being on a leash, they're like, that poor dog, right? But we do it because we believe we keep the dog safe. And so I just want to speak to that, like kudos to those that are trying to control us. They really just want us to be safe, right? They're not like evil. But we do get to recognize that safety is containment, right? So anywhere that's in the mass media that's become popular, you start to question it.
Can you give me a few examples?
Sure. Trauma. Huge, right? Just in the last 5 years, right? Prior to 5 years, that word wasn't as, like in the last 5 years, I feel like everyone is speaking to it. Everyone knows that they have it, and I use that word specifically, knows. It's a context that's been programmed into us. And to get a little bit of esoteric, every word that we speak repeatedly, we literally birth that word in the energetic, also known as the astral plane. It becomes a living being. And that being is it's like a program, right? If we're in a simulation and we keep typing in the ones and zeros that represent trauma, that code goes into the source code, the operating system, and it's exerting how you programmed it. What does that mean in 3D world? It means the energy of trauma literally is exerting its program into all human consciousness, and it perpetuates this. And people think if they just do enough healing, they will end their trauma. No, because it's built into the language, right? And so this is why I changed the context of trauma to a divine seed, right? Because if we are made in the image of God and we're here, most people think we're here for some grand purpose. I think we're just here to experience all of reality. Right? Our ego likes to think that we have some grand purpose. We're gonna do some grand things, right? Because our ego is probably not gonna like, you're here for nothing except to feel and think and experience all the things. And then you repeat. And so from that perspective, then the law of rhythm, right? If you look at jellyfish, right? If we didn't understand what jellyfish was and we saw it for the first time, right? And jellyfish moves by contracting and expanding. That's literally how it moves in the water, right? And when that jellyfish contracts, we're like, oh my God, it's being traumatized. We need to heal it and save it. No, this is literally how jellyfish actually moves. We are energetic beings just like jellyfish. In our life, we contract and then we expand, right? And we're currently calling those contraction experiences trauma. But what if they were divine seeds? What if they were God condensing us so that we can expand? There's so many contexts that we can offer beyond the T word, but we don't question it. Like we hear it, we go, ooh, I must have that. Let me look. We jump right on that pendulum, and now we're in the wound healing, trauma healing pendulum. And we do get to question every context, every word that has become popular.
So I want to keep going down that thread, and I have a question around like, if I change my relationship to trauma, how does that impact the use of the word? Like, sure. Because, if I reframe it and I go through a journey and now I'm on your page, like, is there still utility? Because I'm looking at it as a company that helps people unravel from different constructs, right? Like you can call it trauma, you can call it a condensed emotional experience, you can call it bound energy, whatever we want to call it. There's lots of words for it, but like I'm inherently building a company that's helping people do this. And what I've found to be useful is to be able to explain and use the words that are popularized so that we can help people reframe them.
Exactly.
Right? So like, what's the balance of using words, or is it more of the relationship to the word that's actually more important?
Yeah, both. I think it's really the ideal plan to meet them where they're at. So you use the T word. Once they come into the ecosystem, you reprogram them.
Then you start
for
to
sure,
rewire.
right? Because they're just the T word. Every word has a certain frequency. So you're like casting your fishing rod into that frequency, and you pull them out of it, right? You can't stand by and like, I haven't figured out how to use, I don't know, telepathy or the force to pull the people out. So you got to go in there, meet them where they're at, and pull it out. So absolutely use the T word. But once they're in the ecosystem, you now provide them a different word, right? Condensed energy, heightened or condensed emotional experiences. Those are incredibly, like, if people, listening, you just feel into your energetic self when you say the T word compared to condensed energy or condensed emotional or heightened emotional experiences, you literally vibrate differently. You literally will vibrate differently. And this is the awareness that I would love people to have, is that we're literally these energetic beings, and these words dictate our vibration, and our vibration dictates reality. We're literally being used to create a reality that currently, I'll use a very strong word, enslaves us. In all this, it sounds like gloom and doom. It's not. The reality that I choose is that we're playing hide and seek with ourselves, right? We're like spirit and we're matter. And then when we incarnate, we're like, hey, spirit self, can you go hide in a bunch of places so I can go and find you? And this is the game that we play. So when I say enslavement, really, I'll say it a different way. It's our divine selves picking like the toughest hiding spot for us to find, right? And we just get to play this game and find ourselves. And so, again, always, whatever I speak, I just want to remind anyone that doesn't know me, I don't believe in the words right, wrong, good, bad, positive, and negative. When you remove those 6 words, you remove all judgment. And when you remove all judgment, you're just forced to find the utility, gift, and benefit of every scene, every scenario.
Oh, that's really powerful. So what other words are either worth changing, removing, or replacing?
There's a lot.
Well, if you could think of like
Sure.
for somebody who, obviously there's an entire upgrade to the operating system, right? Then we can go down that whole rabbit hole, and depending on what context and like where somebody at in their life. But I guess like just as in a general sense, when it comes to
examples.
consciousness and awakening, like what you just mentioned is super. I remember the first time I threw out the word always. Like I realized I was using the word always, and every time I'd use the word always, it was keeping me trapped in a limited perspective. Like I didn't have any curiosity. There was no way to actually untangle, and I just kept creating. It's like, you always do this, or this always happens, or I never get to do this, or this never. It's like those like absolutes.
Yep.
Like really have a strong hold on my then choices and like the things I do afterwards. And so I think there are certain words, if we can bring awareness to, can create a lot of freedom for people in realizing that we're living in a glass container that we built for ourselves.
Yep.
And by choosing the right language patterns, language sets, by choosing by actually becoming aware how certain words might enslave us, we now give us the permission and the awareness to break free.
Yep. Yeah, I can give just a handful of really common language that we do get to question, right? And I'll start with the most obvious one, which is I have to compared to I get to, right? This is already beyond spirituality. This is just in what I call personal development space, right? That's a very obvious one. A not so obvious one actually is the words I know.
Actually, before we go to I know, can you just give like a 3-minute short grip on like I have to versus I get to, just for anybody who may not actually, because I think it's like, what I want to really do is like with each word, like the way you did with trauma, like it's so valuable to give people like why, because I feel like when you give someone the why, they're more inspired to actually make the change. And so like with I have to versus I get to, even if it's somewhat obvious, like I'd love to just make it really clear.
Sure. Again, it goes back to energetics, right? Anyone listening, watching, if you simply close your eyes, I'll speak out a few things. I have to wake up. I have to brush my teeth. I have to put on my clothes. I have to go to work. I have to drive back. I have to eat dinner, right? Just feel into your body with all those have tos. And now just feel into your energetics of, I get to wake up. I get to brush my teeth. I get to put on my clothes. I get to go to work. Right? Once you feel that, no further explanation is needed.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's actually perfect. That's perfect. Because even like the get to had like a playful, I felt my actually energy.
Yeah.
Just get lighter. I was like, oh yeah, like I have to.
And even now, there's a meta to that. The reason I did not use words to explain the difference is because every word I would have used limits the deep, deep, deep knowing of the truth of it.
Go.
Yeah, right. And so I just left it as an experience. So
perfect. And so powerful in what you just said. Like that to me. It's funny. One of my advisors, he's like, Raj, you talk too much. he's like, you have a podcast. You should. It's like he was in jest, but in some ways it was like the act of having a podcast to process, or this idea of processing. I've kind of just been so annoyed by it, even though like we have a company that helps people process or reframe. I'm starting to use different words even at the company, like really thinking about like, how do we actually reframe this whole concept of liberation?
Yep.
Right? Because it's like, we're not even helping people heal. There's like healing implies that there's something to fix, which is perpetuating half of the problem, right? But liberation is infinite. It's boundless. It's by nature, it's never ending. So you can always be on this journey, whether you're healthy or not.
Yeah.
And so I've been noticing like just this concept of processing, like it just feels like it's keeping me stuck in a way of doing something it's like the same consciousness that created the problem is trying to solve it.
Yeah.
And I found most recently that in order for me to rise above whatever I want to rise above, I actually can't go through the mind or the way that created it.
Yeah.
Has to be through a deeper layer of surrender or energetics or a different well. So I'm glad you brought awareness to that, because it's actually bringing awareness to something that's very alive for me right now around like we don't need to process.
No. And there's another thing that's possible I'll speak to, which I'm already doing. As we are speaking and communicating with words, verbs, and nouns and adjectives, and we are speaking about these intellectual things, we can show up and vibrate away just by listening or watching. The viewers are somatically benefiting. We can absolutely do this. Right? So there's a deeper layer of existence that's happening beyond the spoken. And I was first inspired to do this when I went to Meow Wolf, right? Because that experience was like, it'll basically meet you where you're at in your consciousness awareness, right? Anything from touch things that light up to have fun, to solving a mystery, to unpacking how reality works. It's all built into the experience. And so I started to realize that we can all produce any content. There's like an intellectual side, which is the spoken word. I'll just go into maybe subconscious, tonality and stuff. And of course, there's I'll call it energy, biophotonic, quantum entanglement aspect, that we can literally set the intention to entangle or biophotonically emanate things that's beyond knowing, beyond intellect, and we're literally changing lives as we speak. So that's all possible. You just kind of hold that intention.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it comes back to, reminding people that your presence has so much value.
Yeah.
Right? Like how many times have you just met somebody, they don't say much, but you can feel the light.
Yeah.
You feel better just being around them. Yeah. And that's an emission of that frequency, that internal embodiment of that love or that devotion or that presence or whatever word we want to call the prayer. But that prayer can be felt. It doesn't need to be spoken. And in many ways, speaking does diminish it.
Yeah.
And so I want to come back to the word. So you said, I know was the next one.
Yeah.
I'd love to speak to that.
Yeah. And I love like making life a game, because it is a game. So anyone that's watching or listening, just like for 5 seconds, take a deep breath, tune into yourself, and just bring awareness to how you're feeling, sensing. And let's do this, definitely when we end, and maybe periodically. And we play this game as you're listening and watching this. Let's also play the game of how is your vibratory, energetic self, with rhythm, dancing with this content, and just become aware of that. It'd be super fun. All right, and so now I'll sort of jump back into the speaking. I know, right? Anything that someone says, and you go, "Oh, I know," you literally have told your consciousness no further unpacking is necessary. Right? It literally blocks any further inquiry. And so now the flip side to this, keep in mind, nothing is good, bad, right, wrong, positive, negative. It's all about knowing how this game works and playing it, right? And so the benefit of I know, right, you bring a certain vibration of certainty. And this is very masculine energy, which is needed. But if you're consistently stuck in the I know languaging, it means you're consistently stuck in just the masculine. Because the feminine is the mystery, it's the I don't know. Right? So this is an example of just how those two words can, without awareness, force you into one side of the gender polarity dance. Right? And so at some point you gotta just say, I don't know. Right? And so how I would play this game is very left brain. Let's go with like, if 10 times a day you go, I know, at least 10 times a day also say, I don't know. Right? And this is just awareness of the spells that we cast and how that affects our reality.
I really appreciate this because I know certain people in my life that could benefit from more I don't knows. But then I know a lot of people in my life that could really benefit from I know.
Absolutely.
Like there's a lot of people that are walking around pretending like they don't know. And it's easier to just say, I don't know what to do in my life. I don't know what to do next. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. When my challenge is like, you do know. You do know. Drop in.
Yep.
And if you weren't judging yourself, or if you weren't comparing yourself, or if you weren't putting yourself inside of this box, and if you actually just let those constructs dissolve, you do know. It's been there, it's going nowhere, and it's always going to be there when you allow yourself the permission to know. And on the other side, there's people that know so well, that are so clear, that are so certain, that are so locked in their ways. And for them, dancing with the mystery is the medicine. And it's that integration into more wholeness. And so that's really cool.
Yeah, and it goes back to even when we went through the practice of I have to compared to I get to. It doesn't mean that I have to is any way bad or wrong or negative. It is just a specific frequency that you get to be aware of. Right? I always remind people, right? It's almost like the other way to say this is mass media language puts you and keeps you in the matrix, right? And then the language that we're talking about and we're inviting people is to exit the matrix. Now, if you notice in the movie, Cypher chose to go back in. He's like, no, this is tough. And so there's nothing actually wrong with choosing to stay in the matrix, right? We have free will. And that's why, in speaking to this, I always remind people in the spiritual space, like, no, you don't judge others for being less awake or not awake. Maybe their soul chose to live and experience the matrix because they spent, 1,000 lifetimes or a bazillion years outside of it, right? And so there's really nothing to save or nothing to help other awaken, right? Because that's still an illusion of you're not there yet. Everyone is sovereign. And so we get to honor people that choose to be in the matrix, just like we get to honor people that are choosing to exit the matrix. And that this is the game that we get to play without judgment.
And I like that it's coming back to even like just calling it a game.
Yeah.
That word.
Yep.
Has a frequency to it.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I can't stop smiling. Yeah, because literally the context that you give life is the version of life that you experience. So once you realize that, you're like, why not play a game? Because it literally is. I experience like the most fun, ridiculous, miraculous moments on a day-to-day basis because that's what I choose. Right. And now there are people that are choosing the burden, hard work, sacrifice, grinding, and there's nothing wrong with that. I went through that. Right. There was a time in my life 20 years ago I would be working, 80 hours a week. And I used to be so far in the control lane that I used to bring my own food to restaurants. I used to map out my workouts for the next 50 workouts based on an Excel sheet that I program where you put in the weights that you do and it spits out the next 50. Ridiculous control. And now obviously I eat anything, and when I do any movement I just intuitively sense what my body wants to do. And changing the relationship, I used to try to get my body from A to B, And now it's more about, with curiosity, how much joy, love, and vibration can I infuse into my body as I'm moving? Right? So just completely changing the game.
Ooh, can you speak to that for a second?
Sure.
Just like reframing working out.
Yeah. The greatest box, the most powerful box that we're in, that we are also tricked into not realizing that we're in, it's the box of you're not there yet, right? Every marketing message has implied that you're not there yet, because the world currently runs on the illusion of, we must tell you you're not there yet so that we can sell you my service or my product, right? Because we can't say, actually, you're divinely perfect, and actually God is driving, you're not even driving. But by the way, I think you need our thing, right? And so we are constantly being programmed that you're not there yet. And we then swim in that energy. Now, when we think about our body, right, I'm not there yet with my body. And so you go to the gym as a vehicle or a mechanism to go from A to B, right? You can apply this to relationships, to business, to spirituality. It's a constant you're not there yet message. Like, that's the illusion. And so pertaining to working out, if you notice, I didn't use that term, right? Even that term comes with a collective energy of you're not there yet. I just call it movement, right? When I do movement, because that tends to be more broad-based, right? It doesn't have that energy, that astral being a workout affecting its energy onto you when you choose a different word. And so, yeah, I think everyone that I've talked to, the current relationship is they work out to change their body, right? And so again, that perpetuates the you're not there yet. And so there's a whole new way you can create any relationship to anything you want. You can get under the bench press and go, okay, how much of God can I feel in my body as I'm moving this?
Damn.
Right? You can totally make that the relationship. Or you can say, my electrical system, I use that instead of nervous system. Let's see how efficient I can make that as I'm moving this bar, right? Make up another story. How much can I empty my mind as I focus on moving this weight?
How did you get good at asking these questions?
I just realized that we're in a game and question all existing relationships because they've been programmed. And so I have a practice for people. You write down as many stories as you have, and you write down the opposite of every story. And you just live as the opposite of the original story, at least for an hour, maybe a day, maybe a week, maybe a month. Every time you do this, you will physically see your reality change. It's going to blow your consciousness, not your mind, your entire consciousness. And every time you do this, the side effect is you're loosening the grip you have about stories, and it just comes naturally. You should, of course, you're just non-attached to stories anymore as you start to practice applying, believing, living as the opposite story. That's a super simple practice.
Oh man, this is so empowering. It's like, this is why I'm like really, I'm inspired by this, because you're literally taking this whole notion of we are creators and giving context and tools for it. Like, we are creating our reality. Okay, what does that mean?
Yeah.
To be creating your reality. Well, it's actually the words you use. Because when you examine the relationships you have with anything outside of you, and you recognize that, okay, this thing is not something that was created by me, and you become aware of it, okay, now you can actually create a new relationship with new rules to this thing that's right in front of you. It could be anything. It could be money. It could be food. It could be challenge. It could be your past. It could be heartbreak. All of these constructs that are outside of us, we can actually just transform when we recognize that we are creating our reality, and our reality is literally a game of our relationship to anything outside of us.
Yes. Yeah, there's a phrase I say to people, and I've been studying mind, body, and spirit now for almost 37 years. And if there's one takeaway, if there's like one thing I can impart on someone from my experience, is this: your relationship, and therefore your story about the choice or the action that you take, is way more powerful than the act itself. Right? Because our relationship to, and I always use this example, right? You have a twin brother or sister, you choose to eat broccoli. That's the choice. And your relationship to it is one of complete joy because you love the texture, the smell. You just tune into your body when you eat broccoli. You're like, oh my God, it lights me up. Your twin eats broccoli every day, the same amount. The relationship is he or she read that it is very anti-cancer. They don't want to die from cancer, so they eat the broccoli every day because they don't want to die from cancer. Let's track the two people's health over their lifespan. We can all assume and guess and theorize that the one that's eating broccoli with a story of joy and fulfillment and right, like just I love it, compared to the one that's fear-based, right? I don't want to die from cancer. Clearly the one that's relating to it with joy is going to be more healthy than the one that's in fear-based. Same action, but they are literally vibrating completely differently as they eat exactly the same amount of broccoli. And you can apply this to everything in your life. You get to choose everything. You get to choose your story. Like I always tell a story that, when my daughter, who's 16 now, was 11, fell, had to get 36 stitches across her mouth and her face. And when she came back from the hospital, I said to her, I'm so sorry that you had to go to the hospital. And her response is like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'm sorry you had to go get stitches. She's like, well, today was the best day of my life. She's like, I got to feel what stitches feel like. And I got to meet mommy's friends at the hospital because she chose a different story, right? Many parents will be like, oh crap, my kid was traumatized and we need to blah, blah, blah.
And I can see how believing that story would then lead to a certain set of actions that are going to
downstream.
Imprint fear into the girl's psyche, right? And so it's like, and that's the piece that's so, I'm like really wanting to call this out because this is what got me so excited to talk to you because this feels like the ultimate cheat code.
It is.
It is the ultimate cheat code. So what other, okay, so believing that life is a game is one belief system. The Hermetic laws are another set of belief systems or rules, codes, whatever you want to call them. What else would somebody need to understand or know in order for them to really put this into practice in their life?
Yep. I can give a framework. And what's fascinating about this framework, and we spoke about this at dinner, which is I was given this knowing, like divine awareness instruction. And this has been confirmed with friends that have synesthesia, which is, I was given this image, 7, 8 years ago that whenever we speak, we're literally speaking geometry. We're speaking shapes into reality. And the color of that shape has to do with the emotion that we have as we speak that word, right? And we're literally building this energetic, vibratory Lego world, right? Like I was picturing different Lego pieces based on what word we're speaking, and the color of the Lego pieces based on our emotion, our state of being. And what happens is that this this energetic, higher vibration Lego world eventually slows down and densifies and becomes our physical reality. And recently I had friends that came over with synesthesia, which just means genetically they can see and taste sound. And they confirmed this. Like, when you speak, people with synesthesia, two friends, female friends, they say they see literally shapes of geometry coming out of people's mouth being formed that is of different color. And so this framework, right, that we are literally, with every vibration that comes out of our mouths, we're literally building this reality. And that's because we are made in the image of God. I mean, it's hinted in so many religious and different spiritual practices that we are absolutely the coder of this reality as well as the player. And it gets really fun when you remember this.
Because so maybe that's the trivia. It's to just remember.
Remember that you're the coder and the player, and that this game is, and it can be any way that you want it, anyway.
Oh, man. Steve, I just love you, dude. Like, I've missed you. Like, I was so glad when I texted Sophia that you guys were together, because I didn't even know you were in Austin. I was like, wow, like, and just even the brief. I mean, I'll just share this. Like you've been so pivotal for me in my journey. Ever since the first moment of Camp Maverick, all the way to the journey we did at Christy and Jonathan's, to all these little micro moments. I just feel like you've been such a consistent anchor point. And to be able to be here with you now, like just sharing these moments and to feel where you are in your journey and how you're teaching this and how you're sharing these perspectives with such a depth of conviction.
Yeah.
It feels it's always been your gift, actually. Like I remember even when you looked at me and you really taught me self-love. I still remember that moment. It was like you said it with such conviction that it actually broke through. And I feel you doing this in this moment and in this conversation. And I'm just super grateful that I get to have you in my life and that we get to be on this ride together and that I get to witness you become you and to experience all the advisorship and friendship over the years. And so it's such a treat and a pleasure to have these moments with you, brother. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I fully receive that and fully remind you everything you discern, of course, is also a projection and it's in you. So,
what you see in me is what you see in you.
so I fully receive and
back at you. Oh yeah, brother. Well, so talk to me about what's alive for you right now. Like, what are you birthing? We were talking a little bit about some projects you have coming up.
Yeah.
Would love to just bring awareness to the work, and
sure.
I'm sure there's going to be a few people that want to follow you around.
Yeah, I'm excited. The last couple of years was really making sure that we fully launch Immortal, and now that it's fully launched, really 99% of that lifting, that work was, Brian and the team, like incredible.
So crazy. Just on that note, I was at a biohacking conference last year, and I saw, I think like an Immortal. Either like a product or something, and it looked sick.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize it. Like, I remember the first like prototype. I think I was on like the beta. I know. I saw like the prototype.
Yeah.
Like it was all pieced together, and like you were experimenting, and like to see what it looks like a transformer now.
It's like an art piece.
I was like blown away.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
I was blown away. I was like, oh, holy shit. Like Steve, like, wow.
Yeah. Like, it is an art piece of miracles. Like, we had an 8-year-old go in, 3 sessions later, her genetic disorder reversed. And at age 10 now, she's like a Reiki teacher.
Wow.
15% of the people will say they talk to God directly in it. This is what's real, right? And so for anyone that's listening to that, they're like, no, that can't be. No, it literally, this is the physical experience. And so super excited. That's sort of on its way. And now I'm being called. This is not even, actually, I'll back up. In the last 2 years, I've purposely have set 0 intentions, 0 goals. I'm literally just an empty vessel for God's will, right? I don't plan even a week out. And so, but what's happening is, spiritpreneuring is happening. Like I'm just being told that conscious capitalism is not going to work going forward. Right? And the analogy I give is if we're in a zoo, conscious capitalism is, making the zoo better. And then with the extra resources from having made the zoo better, we'll take those extra resources and serve the underprivileged animals. What we really want are spiritpreneurs that are taking people out of the zoo. Right? So every touch point of their business benefits everyone, not just after purchase. Every benefit from the first touch point, if someone just saw a commercial or saw an ad, the prospects' lives would have been immensely benefited and changed. And that person would have gone through a deep self-awareness, reflection, spiritual journey. And this is not any more difficult to do than conscious capitalism and not any more difficult than regular capitalism. It's just a different way. It doesn't take additional effort. It's a new story. And so I'm deeply passionate about helping entrepreneurs evolve to this spiritpreneuring. And like we talked about before we started, it's a verb, right? Because we don't want you to adopt a label of spiritpreneur, because now that's a label. So you're actioning the thing without ever taking on a label, because we, want to live in a labelless, world going forward.
Oh, that's so good, man. I'm so glad you gave more context to it, because it feels, and that's coming back to like, it's the same thing. You're just seeing it differently.
Yeah.
And that then therefore changes it altogether. That's the thing. That's actually it. It's like nothing is different. It's like it's like we're literally changing the story, and then it becomes a completely different expression. And that expression is so much more empowering and congruent and in flow. And that can be the norm. And that's what, Steve, dude, you're the best. It's like, I so appreciate. I'm so glad you're here. This is like the best. I'm like, this is such a surprise. I was literally just talking to Alex, like we were talking, like he's like, I think you're gonna manifest another guest, because we didn't have anybody like slated for the afternoon, and and then I text him later, like, got somebody. He's like laughing about it because it was like we just like, and it was truly the perfect guest. So. Anyways, brother, thank you so much. I have one last question for you. And by the way, for everybody listening, is Spiritpreneur live yet, or is it just a concept right now?
I just secured the domain spiritpreneuring.com.
Cool.
There's nothing there yet. We're just in the initial stages. However, I'm already working with multiple companies where I'm advising them to basically live and act and behave that way.
Yeah. I figured there's like advising, or like that's kind of how somebody would be able to engage with you. Yeah, great. Brother, so great having you. I got one last question for you. Yeah. In the midst of everything you're doing, everywhere you've been, and everywhere you're going, how do you stay grounded? And most actually, curiously, what's one thing you've done consistently over time to become a more grounded human being?
That's such a great question. It's got chills. I operate from the context of the Ho'oponopono.
Oof.
Right? And I've seen so many variations in people teaching different variations, but the essence of the Ho'oponopono from Dr. Hewlin, the origin essence is, I love you, God. I'm sorry I have not recognized your love and your divine orchestration in every moment of my life. Please forgive me. Thank you.
Whoa.
So I operate from that. And anytime I deviate from that, where I'm feeling a little cringy, a little buzzy, a little, even as far as unsafe or unknown, I go back to that and I take care of my sacred temple. And this has always worked out for me.
Whoa, I did not know that about the Ho'oponopono prayer.
Huge. So 3 years ago, I went through the most painful relationship breakup. I was literally crying for 2 days straight. And on the second day, my inner knowing, I've had this inner knowing voice instruct me since I was 5. And I committed to listening to it no matter what it says at age 37. Right? I'm 50 this year. But 3 years ago, when it said, go get certified in the Ho'oponopono, I argued with it for the first time. I was like, why do I need to go get certified? I've been using it for 7 years. Because if you and I were fighting, right, I would direct it towards you. But the voice said, go get certified. I was like, okay. So I went and took the course, and it was life-changing. I learned the essence of it. You never direct it to any situation or any person. The only quote-unquote person, entity that you direct it to is God, always. And what it does is it clears your subconscious, and it brings even more miracles to come in. And so being a Asian, which is an A student, I was like, okay, I want to test this. So I chanted it for 30 hours a week for 2 weeks. I was like, if it's going to bring miracles, I'm going to expect some serious miracles. So after 2 weeks, 9 consecutive days, every day a miracle happened in my life. And I was like, okay, this is legit. So every day before I eat, I always connect with the Ho'oponopono. I just habit stack. Throughout the day, if I'm not thinking of things, I'll just Ho'oponopono. Again, if I'm feeling really like, oh, what's the next thing? I'm really not sure. I will always do something to serve my sacred temple. And this has always worked for me.
Oh, so beautiful, brother. Thank you for.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you again for sharing so openly, and yeah, it's really, really, really good to be with you.
Yep.
Yeah. Everybody, that's a wrap for this week's episode of Stay Grounded. I'm your host, Raj. This is your old friend, Steve, because he's been on the show. That's right. And from us, stay grounded. We'll chat soon.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Stay Grounded. No matter where you're from or what you're going through, I hope it helps you remember just how incredible you are and have always been. If you're on a path of emotional healing or self-discovery and would like to learn how Liberate can support your journey, head to www.rajana.com/liberate. That is LIBER8 to learn more about our current group programs and one-on-one offerings. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.